My name is Isabella Hart. I'm 30 years old, single, a freelance financial analyst living alone in Asheville, North Carolina. In my family, I've always been the responsible one, quiet, dependable, and easy to overlook. I was the one who showed up, paid the bills, and stayed in the background. I used to think staying silent kept the peace. Until one night, at my parents' anniversary dinner, my sister laughed, raised her glass, and said something that split my world wide open, and for the first time, I didn't stay quiet. That night, I arrived a few minutes late. I'd been finishing a client report for a firm in New York. As I stepped into my parents' dining room in Asheville, Savannah's gaze found me instantly, sharp as ever. The family was raising glasses to toast my parents' 40th wedding anniversary, a moment that should have felt warm, until Savannah took a long sip of red wine and laughed. Then, with a smirk, she said, clear and loud, "So, Isabella, how does it feel being the most useless one here?" Her words cut deep, cold, and precise. I smiled faintly, not out of amusement, but because I'd heard it all before. Dad gave a slight nod, as if agreeing. Mom looked away. Savannah's husband chuckled, and a few cousins laughed along. Not one person asked how I felt. I sat down, my fingers trembling slightly around a glass of water. I'd stayed silent for years, thinking keeping the peace mattered more. But that night, something inside me cracked. I looked Savannah dead in the eyes, breathed deeply, and said calmly, "How do you think it'll feel when the useless one stops paying your power bills, your kids' tuition, and that failing store of yours?" Silence. A sharp, exposed kind of silence that peeled back the facade. Savannah's face drained of color. The others gawked like I'd just spoken in tongues. But I wasn't done, not even close. I learned to sacrifice before I even knew what the word meant. At 14, while other girls were saving up for concert tickets or movie nights, I was bussing tables at a greasy diner off Merritt Avenue. The air always smelled like fryer oil and burnt coffee, and the tips were barely enough, but every dollar went into a rusted tin box hidden under my bed. I never thought I was allowed to keep money for myself. That winter, I overheard Mom whispering to Dad in the kitchen. Another power shutoff notice came. Savannah was in her room, laughing on the phone, oblivious to the strain. The next day, I handed Mom the $280 I'd scraped together over 3 months. "Use this," I said. She looked at me, eyes rimmed with tears, and simply said, "Thank you." Dad didn't say a word. No one told anyone. The lights stayed on, the heat came back, and Savannah showed off a new pair of sneakers at school. No one knew I cried in the bathroom that night, realizing I wasn't just a daughter, I was their hidden life raft. By 16, when Dad's truck broke down, it was my savings that covered the repairs. When the fridge went empty, I picked up extra shifts to restock it. When Savannah needed a dress for a school dance, Mom quietly cut my lunch budget to make it work. Savannah never noticed. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I kept giving quietly, they'd see me. But the more I gave, the more I disappeared. They called me the responsible one, but never once asked if I was tired. I once believed I'd leave Asheville for good. At 18, I was awarded a partial scholarship to a prestigious university in Boston, a place where I could study finance, live beneath the city lights, and finally start a life that was mine. I'd mapped out every week, every work shift, every dream. It was all I wanted to live for myself. But that summer, Savannah came home drowning in student debt. She'd chosen a pricey private school, assuming our parents would cover everything. They couldn't. And like they always did, they turned to me. I remember that afternoon, Dad sitting across from me at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee, eyes heavy with resignation. Family comes first, you know that, right, Isabella? It wasn't a demand, just quiet expectation, one I wasn't ruthless enough to deny. So I let go of Boston, stayed in Asheville, enrolled in the local community college, took $2,000 from my hard-earned savings, the result of hundreds of hours bussing tables, to help pay off part of Savannah's debt. She graduated with a fashion degree she never used. I juggled night classes and day jobs, living off instant noodles and cheap coffee. Savannah never once said thank you. She'd drop by the house on weekends, laughing about parties and her newest fling. My parents beamed, calling her the pride of the family. And me? I sat at the corner of the table, budgeting every cent for next semester's textbooks, quiet as a shadow. I gave up Boston. I gave up myself for someone who never saw it as a sacrifice. In the years that followed, I almost forgot what it felt like to live for myself. I worked constantly from freelance financial analysis during the day to evening shifts at a small accounting firm in downtown Asheville. The income was decent, enough to live comfortably, if I kept it. But I never did. Every few weeks, my mom would call with that soft voice of hers, "The power bill's a bit high this month," or "Your niece needs a new laptop for school." And then there was Savannah, texting, "The business is a little tight right now. Can you float me $1,500? I didn't ask questions. I just transferred the money. At first it was a couple hundred here and there. Then it grew. Thousands. When Savannah's online boutique started wobbling, I quietly began sending monthly deposits to help her maintain inventory. She called it a small sisterly favor. Once, I paid $800 to fix my parents' broken water heater. My dad just nodded and said, "Good job, Isabella," like I'd taken out the trash. No one asked if I could afford it, if I was okay, if I needed anything. They were just used to me always managing. Savannah kept showing up at family holidays, glowing and fashionable, bragging about her success like debt had never touched her. The family listened, laughed, and clinked glasses. And I sat there, the one who kept everything running quiet as a cog no one noticed. I started to wonder, did they actually see me? Or was I just a silent, invisible bank, reliable, replaceable, and never allowed to break? I was working late in my little apartment when the phone rang. It was almost midnight. I thought it might be an emergency. Savannah's name lit up the screen. I hesitated, then picked up. "Isabella, I need your help," she said, her voice a blend of charm and urgency. "The shop's about to expand. If I had $50,000, we could bulk order new inventory. You're great with money, you can make it happen." I paused, then said calmly, $50,000 is a lot, Savannah. Why now?" She laughed sharp and dismissive. "Come on, you sit at a computer all day. It's not like you're saving lives. Just help me out. It's for the family, after all." Every cell in my body tensed. The years I'd spent staying up late, managing high-stakes deals, scraping together a living, and to her, my career was just clicking around. I inhaled deeply. "I can't help you this time. And Savannah, it's not my job anymore." Silence. Then her voice turned ice cold. "You've always been selfish. Hoarding your tiny paycheck like you're the only one who cares about the family. You think you're better than us?" I gripped the phone tighter, heart pounding, but this time, I didn't retreat. "You have no idea what I've done, but you're about to find out." She hung up before I could say more. I sat there, hands trembling, angry, exhausted, and finally ready. I opened my laptop not for work, but to pull every record, every transfer I'd ever made. That night, I started writing the truth. And this time, I wouldn't keep it to myself. That evening, I walked into my parents' house in Asheville with my heart racing and my hands clenched tightly around my purse. It was their anniversary dinner, and I knew exactly how this would play out. Savannah, as always, was at the center of the room, glowing, laughing, regaling relatives with stories about her thriving fashion business. Dad nodded along like everything was just fine. Mom floated by with serving trays, avoiding my eyes. I slipped quietly into my seat. No one noticed, until Savannah turned, lifted her wine glass, and smirked. "So, Isabella, how does it feel being the most useless one in the family?" It was a spark to the powder keg I'd buried for years. I didn't laugh. I didn't lower my gaze. I met hers squarely and said, in a voice calm enough to slice, "How do you think it'll feel when the useless one stops paying your kids' school tuition, stops bailing out your failing store, and stops covering mom and dad's bills?" A spoon clattered against a plate, loud in the dead silent room. Savannah froze. Everyone else stared, mouths ajar. I stood up slowly, the chair scraping against the hardwood. 3 years of private school tuition, $20,000. A loan in my name to rescue your business, $40,000. Monthly deposits $2,000 to keep your suppliers happy. And in return, I get mocked. Dad's voice rumbled. That's enough, Isabella. I turned to him, voice steady and steel cold. No, Dad, this is just the beginning. I left the dinner in silence. No one followed. The door clicked shut behind me sharp. Final, but I felt lighter than I had in years. I'd said what needed to be said, and for the first time, I didn't apologize for it. That night, I sat at my laptop, logged into my bank account. One click. The automatic $2,000 transfer to Savannah's business canceled, just like that. Years of quietly supporting her success, of keeping things afloat behind the scenes. It ended there. 2 days later, the text started. Vendors are calling, what's going on? Why's the account empty? Then one from Dad. Your mom's worried. You're putting your sister in a terrible position. No one asked if I was okay. By day 3, they were at my door. Savannah looked pale, angry. Dad stood beside her, quiet, eyes heavy. What are you doing? Savannah snapped. You cut off my funding. The store's about to collapse. I folded my arms, leaning against the kitchen counter. You thought I'd do this forever? Month after month? Year after year? Without a single thank you? Dad stepped in. Isabella, you're blowing this out of proportion. We're family. I walked to the desk, pulled out a thick folder, and dropped it on the coffee table. They flipped it open: bank statements, loan agreements, documents proving I'd held 60% of the business since 2016. Savannah's face drained of color. I'm not asking for the money back, I said. I'm asking for the truth, and some respect. But if that's too much, then don't expect anything more from me. I pointed to the door. Leave. Dad quietly took Savannah's arm. They walked out without another word. And for the first time in my life, I closed that door without guilt. 5 days after that confrontation at my apartment, I thought maybe the storm had passed. I was wrong. That afternoon, the doorbell rang sharp, insistent, like it wanted to shatter the fragile calm I'd been trying to build. I glanced through the peephole. Savannah again, this time with Mom. I hesitated, then opened the door. Savannah stormed in without a greeting, her face flushed with anger. Mom looked worn out, dark circles under her eyes, shoulders slumped. You're tearing this family apart, Isabella, Savannah hissed. Who do you think you are? Just because you have some shares, you think you control everything? I crossed my arms, keeping my voice steady. Some shares? I own 60% of your company, Savannah. I saved it when you couldn't. She shouted. You only did that to hold power over me. If I'd known you'd use it to manipulate me, I never would have signed. I calmly walked to the table and handed Mom a copy of the 2016 contract with Savannah's signature, the bank's, and the notary seal. No one tricked you. You signed it. And I'm not manipulating you. I'm just done being the invisible one who fixes everything. Mom stepped in, her voice trembling. Isabella, please don't push this further. We're family. I turned to her, eyes stinging, but voice firm. I've been family for years, Mom. But you all only remember me when there's a bill to pay. No one asks what I need. No one stands with me. Savannah slammed her hand on the table. If you don't sell your stake back, I'll sue. I nodded slowly, my gaze like steel. Go ahead. I have the proof. I'm not afraid of you anymore. I knew from the beginning that Savannah wasn't bluffing. 2 weeks after our last confrontation, I got an email from her attorney's office. Subject: Notice of civil action for contractual fraud. I read every line, a mix of disbelief and grim amusement. She was accusing me of coercion, claiming I manipulated her into signing over 60% of the business. A contract we both signed, with a notary, and backed by months of bank documentation. I wasn't going to face this alone. I reached out to Karen Holt, a lawyer recommended by my best friend, Nicole. After reading the file, Karen looked up and said, She's trying to weaponize the law to punish you for standing up to her. We're not letting that happen. We spent 6 weeks preparing. Every wire transfer, every negotiation email, every bank statement, I printed them. organized them, and handed them over. On court day, I sat beside Karen, hands cold but heart steady. Across the room, Savannah glared at me like I'd betrayed her. She still didn't get it. I hadn't destroyed anything, I'd just stopped being her backup plan. Karen laid out the facts with surgical precision. She told the judge, "My client didn't defraud anyone. She made a clear legal investment out of family loyalty, and now she's being vilified for it." It took the judge less than an hour to dismiss the lawsuit. The contract was valid. There was no fraud. I kept my 60%. I walked out of that courtroom lighter than I'd felt in years. I hadn't just won a case, I reclaimed my voice, my dignity, and my worth. Winning in court didn't come with fireworks. No one was waiting in the parking lot with open arms. I walked out of that courtroom alone but lighter than I'd felt in years. Savannah went silent right after the verdict. No messages, no apology. My dad didn't say a word, like my legal victory was something he just couldn't accept. My mom sent a single text. "I miss you. Please don't let this go any further." I didn't reply. For weeks, my apartment was wrapped in silence. No more late-night calls about unpaid bills. No one asking me to front a little cash. You know it's for the family. And strangely, I didn't feel empty. I felt free. I started walking every evening along the French Broad River. I bought a small easel. Every night, I painted just colors, just movement, no judgment, no expectations. For the first time, I wasn't doing anything for anyone else. One day, an email from a nonprofit I'd collaborated with landed in my inbox. "Isabella, would you consider speaking at our upcoming conference on personal resilience and rebirth?" I almost said no. Sharing my story in public had never been something I imagined myself doing. But then I thought of all those years I lived like a shadow. Now I had a voice, and I planned to use it. And there, on that stage, I wasn't the useless one they used to laugh at. I was a woman who had fallen, risen, and finally chosen herself for no one else but me. I thought I'd tremble on that stage, stumble through my words, praying for the time to pass quickly. But as the lights came on and I began telling my story about years of silent sacrifice, about letting go, rising up, and finally choosing myself, the room fell completely still. I didn't sugarcoat it. I told the truth. About paying for my niece's tuition without anyone knowing. About working nights while studying to make up for a dream I once abandoned. I talked about being treated like a walking wallet, and the moment I realized love shouldn't mean losing myself. When I stepped down from the podium, my hands were still a little shaky, but then one woman walked up to me, then another, and another. Some cried, some hugged me tight. "You just told my life story," one whispered. "Thank you for saying what I never could." We sat together after the event, women who'd always been told to show up, to take care of it, to keep the peace. They told me about toxic dynamics, about families that only remembered them when help was needed. And for the first time, I wasn't listening to fix anything. I was just listening. That's when I realized my story wasn't unique. But what made it powerful was that I chose to share it. And in doing so, I stepped out of the shadows and helped others find the courage to do the same. 4 months after the court case ended, I sat in my little Asheville apartment as golden sunlight poured through the window. My phone sat silent on the table. No more texts from Mom. No calls from Dad. No attempts from Savannah to reach out. I used to fear this silence. I thought I'd fall apart if I were ever cut off from my family. But now I know it wasn't the end. It was the beginning. I'm no longer the one standing behind the curtain, carrying the weight of everyone else's choices. No more sleepless nights trying to move money around so others could live easier lives. I let go, and in doing so, I reclaimed mine. I kept working with the nonprofit, launching a program to fund local children's art projects. I painted, I wrote, I lived. Not to prove anything, but because I wanted to. Savannah stopped sending threats. Dad stopped calling, demanding I take care of the family. Mom texted once, saying she missed me. I didn't reply. Not out of anger, but because I finally understood. Love without respect is not love, and family should never cost you yourself. I used to think freedom meant walking away, but now I know true freedom is being able to stay in the same place that once broke you, and no longer feel small. I'm not saving anyone anymore. I'm living for me. And for the first time in my life, I know what peace feels like. Life constantly asks us to give our time, our money, our kindness. But what I've learned is this: giving doesn't mean losing yourself. Some relationships turn sacrifice into an expectation, and somewhere along the way, gratitude disappears. I used to believe that family was unconditional, that silence kept the peace. But silence, when stretched too long, teaches others to ignore your voice. When I finally stood up, it wasn't to get revenge. It was to be seen for who I am, what I've done, and what I will no longer tolerate. If you're stuck in a relationship that's draining you, if you've been giving and still feel invisible, know this: you're not alone, and you have the right to choose again. To choose yourself. I'm no longer the family's fixer. I'm no longer the walking wallet. I'm Isabella, a woman who finally said enough and chose to live on her own terms. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment below. Have you ever been the one carrying everyone else's weight? Share your story, it might just be the strength someone else needs to hear today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss more powerful real-life stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.